Hi, I'm Pam Austin. I'm the head of communications for the Samsung Strategy and Innovation Group. And I have with me my beloved colleague, Shankar Chandran, the managing director and head of Samsung Catalyst Fund. So I'll get started. Shankar, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know a little bit about you, but tell them who you are.
Thank you, Pam. Let me maybe first say this. First of all, I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for giving Samsung a chance and for working with us. I represent the venture capital investment side of Samsung Electronics. A little bit about myself. I have been a venture capitalist for about 15 years. I've worked at a couple of different independent partnerships as a partner before I joined Samsung 4 years ago. I have a technical background, and prior to and then after the technical, working here in Silicon Valley as an engineer for a few years, I decided to move over and start doing business development and sales, and finally started doing venture capital about 15 years ago. Here, a little bit about why and what we do here. We can talk about that, in our conversation. But one thing I'd like for you guys to think about is venture capital is a strategic tool for Samsung. This is a combination of thinking about it as an independent venture capitalist would, which is a company going to really succeed and win in this market? And that's a very important question that we try to answer. And number two, we try to think about how could we work with that company, and can we invest, and can we think about a 1 + 1 = 3 for the benefit of both the company as well as Samsung. That's why Samsung thinks about venture capital.
Thanks. Tell me, we saw a little bit in the video, a good overview, but I think we want to go a little bit deeper on Samsung Catalyst Fund. It's kind of like a secret in the Valley. So why don't you tell us more about what the fund is, why it's unique, when did you get started, the history and the background? That'd be helpful.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
So Samsung has been a very regular venture capital investor for about 25 years. Now, if you are in the audience and you're a startup, that is a really important thing to think about, because if you go back in the venture capital history, not just here in Silicon Valley, but all over the world, go back about 30, 35 years, typically what happens is a corporate investor would start investing into a market when it's really hot, right? And when the market kind of goes down in general, they would exit the market. Samsung has been a regular investor through the ups and downs. Which is, we are committed to venture capital. We've been committed in the past, and we continue to be committed to doing venture capital in the future. About 4 years ago, when Young Sohn joined Samsung Electronics, he observed that the venture capital investments that Samsung had done so far were primarily related to our existing business units. Now, most of you may probably have a Samsung TV or a Samsung phone. You guys know that Samsung not only is a very strong player in the smartphone market or consumer electronics, but also in the semiconductor market. We are world leaders in memory chips and things like that. So our prior investments were primarily focused on benefiting these large business units and their next step in their continued progress towards a bigger market share or more differentiated products. We realized that most of those investments were typically in mid to late stage investments because our business units are very focused on what could we do the next product cycle, which is typically 6 months away or 12 months away. So we typically would only invest in mid to late stage companies. Now, if you just do that, I think you can still be a very successful investor, and we have been. Over 50 companies that we've invested in has gone IPO. And we have over $2 billion worth of venture capital investments over the last 25 years. However, if you really want to capitalize on the most disruptive ideas, some of the most interesting things that's happening around us today, both here in the Valley as well as other technology hotspots, we were really not looking at those ideas. We were playing catch up. So we wanted to change that fundamentally. The second thing that we wanted to change was, as you think about, say, IoT and Samsung's Arctic platform, this is a very new effort. The entire IoT effort is only a few years old. Quite similarly, efforts in areas like digital health. Samsung is not a health company today. However, aspirationally, we really want to think about digital health as a space where which we want to build a business. Autonomous cars and smart cars. Samsung recently acquired Harman as a company, and we are now a tier one as a company, tier one automotive supplier. We don't have a business unit there today until we acquired Harman. How do we think about making investments in areas where we're aspirationally going to be building a new business? So Samsung Catalyst Fund really is a combination of those two things, which is earlier, very disruptive ideas that we were not doing, as well as thinking about areas where we don't have a business, where there are large tectonic shifts that's happening around us, and how do we go find the most disruptive startups in these areas, invest in them, learn from them, find a way to build connective tissue to work with these companies, and together find a way by which we both can win. So that's why Samsung Catalyst Fund was put together. The fund is today an evergreen fund. We have the ability to deploy up to $100 million per year. The team is global. We have 3 teams, basically. We have a team here in Silicon Valley based in Menlo Park. We have another team in Herzliya, Israel, and a third team in London. And the Silicon Valley team covers North America, the Herzliya team covers Israel, and the London team covers all of Europe. We typically invest between 15 to 20 investments per year. The range is as little as a few $100,000 all the way up to, yesterday we just invested in a company where we invested $8 million. So we are fairly flexible in terms of the ideas that we invest in. But the most important thing we look for is the company doing something highly disruptive and defensible? And that, by the way, is not just technology. It could be business model. It could be an approach to market. Right? It could be a lot of different things. Disruption can not just come from technology, it can come from many different angles. But that is very important. But then more importantly, can we find a way to work with a company? And particularly as it relates to Arctic, for example, we really ask the question, can they be a disruptive partner for us? And can we think about how startup A can work with Arctic and Arctic Cloud, and together can we say that 1 + 1 is 3? And if we can answer those questions, if we believe in you as a winner, and if we can think of us as being able to help you become a really successful company, that forms the basis of an investment thesis.
That's good. Talk to me a little bit about, so I'm a big foodie, and I read recently that they are putting smart technologies into sous vides, which is a low cooking process. I got super excited, and VCs are backing it. So there's a lot of macro trends and outlooks out there that VCs are getting very interested in. So talk to me about what you see and what you're starting to see out there and what you think about it.
Sure, Pam. So where do we invest, right? So where do we invest, and why do we invest, and what is really happening out there? So let me talk a little bit about some of the big macro trends that I observe meeting with several companies. And my team sees up to about 1,500 startups a year, and as I mentioned, we invest about 15 to 20 startups in a year. So we see a lot. The highest level, I think, we feel as an investment team that this is probably one of the most exciting times to be investing. And why is that? So there is a virtuous cycle going on around us. So I think of it as biology having an enormous amount of influence on technology, and technology in reverse having a tremendous amount of influence on biology. So let me talk a little bit about that. So about 4 or 5 years ago, 2011, 2012 timeframe, there was a real massive development that happened literally in 3 different places almost concurrently at the same time on deep learning. Right? Deep learning is a form of AI. It was really influenced by biology and really the way the brain makes decisions and the way the neurons are actually wired in a hierarchical way. That was a really big influence in the way a completely new branch of developments really started. Everything, all the hype you hear about today on AI really came off that one single big development in deep learning. Similarly in robotics, a lot of the robotics motions and planning, etc., have been deeply influenced by movements of, say, animals like ants. Right? Ants are extremely efficient in the way they move around. And Professor Rodney Brooks at MIT has done some amazing work in just translating how robotics is fundamentally influenced by the way animals move, right? Where distributed intelligence works and how, in a very efficient way, can make that work. So biology has this incredibly strong influence on technology, and we didn't quite grokked that until a few years ago. Now, on the other hand, technology continues to have an enormous amount of impact on biology as well. And how is that? So technology, things like sensors, for example, if you can build a sensor that can, say, non-invasively measure blood pressure, you can get a great sense of cardiovascular health. So that's really awesome, right? Similarly, technology is continuing to bring down the cost of the human genome. And by doing that, you can fundamentally make a big difference there. Now, Pam referred to some interesting cooking technologies. Now, that brings us to nutrition. So if you think about nutrition, how we turn out to be in terms of our future health and well-being really comes down to a few very important things that matter to everybody around the world. Are we eating well? Are we sleeping well? Are we managing stress better? And do we have an active lifestyle? Right? And these are the four things that matter. Turns out that human behavior is really hard to change, but if you actually think about how you can surface up the right kind of inputs and nutrition based on real data, and I can make sure that the food that we are consuming is not only delicious, but is also extremely helpful, for what we need in terms of our lifestyle, and also think about the other aspects. We begin to pull together this comprehensive set of ideas that really matter to humans. And that's where technology, I think, comes back to influence biology again. And this virtuous cycle is where we are finding a tremendous amount of opportunities out there. AI is one piece of it, but if you really think about where we're going, is this virtuous cycle of biology to technology and technology back to biology.
That's good. I have a question here from someone in the audience. It says, you are here in Silicon Valley, the Mecca. It is a bubble. Why do you even need to invest? Why does Samsung need to invest as big as they are? Why don't you just partner with companies and startups? Why not just do it that way?
Great question, Pam. So here is a very simple way to think about it. So first of all, Samsung does not have to invest, right? We can absolutely work with startups, and in fact, not every company is really is ready for an investment from not just Samsung, but with anybody else, right? Venture capital typically works in a certain type of company, which is the company has something that is defensible, and it's a fast-growing idea, and it has tremendous amount of risk in it. But if it succeeds, there is a very large outcome, right? So those are the type of companies that typically work for venture capital. A lot of other companies may just not be right for venture capital. Now, if you are a company that does have something highly disruptive, and it does have something that Samsung can help, then I really would like for you to think about Samsung as a good partner for you. So why does venture capital work in that circumstance? So if we invest in you, the venture capital team in Samsung, my team, becomes your cheerleader inside of Samsung. So a couple of examples. So Samsung is an incredibly hard company to navigate. So our mobile platform, for example, practically ships the highest number of smartphones around the world, 400 million cell phones a year, right? I'll give you an example of a company that our investment team have been working with for a few years, a company called Princeton Identity. I'm not sure if you guys know this company. Today, if you buy a Samsung S8...
This is really cool. This is really cool what he's about to do.
And if you want to turn on, if you want to open up this phone, I have an opportunity to just look right into the phone, and it just opens up. It has an iris scanner that just unlocks the phone, right? And this company is actually embedded inside the phone. And this is a company that the investment team found a few years ago and started working with. If you think about why should this company work with Samsung and why should it take our investment, we enabled the company to get on 400 million phones this year.
400 million.
That is right. There is simply no other platform that is that large. So if you think you're a disruptive idea, and if you want to work with Samsung, and by taking our investment, you work extremely close with us, and the venture capital team really is a cheerleader to enable this process to make you really get on our platform. And eventually, the company wins by really getting the distribution that is quite impossible to get otherwise. And we, as an investor, are able to play a small part in that. I think it's a win-win situation.
Talk to me a little bit, another example that I think we just teed up, we kind of cut into it, but I'll tee it back to you, around Ring, this company called Ring. Now, many of y'all might have seen the commercial where you walk up to the door? Well, I'll leave it there. Why don't we roll the video, and then we'll come back and ask Shankar a few closing questions with the minutes that we have left in the segment.
All right, I want to tell you about something called the Ring Video Doorbell. It's a doorbell that sends alerts to your smartphone when anybody presses your doorbell or triggers the built-in motion sensor.
It's like you're always home. Even if you're not there, the alert goes to your cell phone. It's safety, it's security, it's ease of use. It's so cool.
USA Today and Time Magazine named the Ring Video Doorbell top gadget. Why? Because with Ring, you're always home.
Ring partnered with the LAPD as part of a pilot program to reduce burglaries.
We're going to try to get a large percentage of the homes here to actually have rings on them, with the hope that if we're able to have enough cameras in the neighborhood and work with the police, that we can actually reduce the crime in this community.
Police revealing a 6-month pilot program using the tool helped reduce burglaries in one neighborhood by more than 50%.
Well, now Ring has extended the platform with the Ring Stick-Up Cam.
The world's only fully wireless outdoor security camera.
To create a ring of security around your home.
So thank you. That was quite powerful. I have it. I have my Nest. I'm waiting for all that to connect and talk to each other through Curtis and all the wonderful IoT technologies that are coming. But what I like about this is the community impact, the potential to drive down crime. Can you talk a little bit about
Absolutely.
our technologies and how we're not driving just for money's sake, but we're really trying to drive to better people's lives, communities, neighborhoods around the world?
Absolutely, Pam. Really good point. Let me back up and give you a couple of interesting ideas to think about. I think Ring, first of all, is an investment by the Samsung Catalyst Fund. We invested in the company a few years ago to enable Ring to work very closely with Samsung, and they are connected to the Samsung Cloud, for example, right? Now, first of all, what is so interesting about this company and why it is relevant to this audience in IoT? I think earlier today, President Young Soon was here, and I think he asked a very important question, which is who's making money in IoT? Right? And I think it's really important to come back and think about companies that are actually making money. Ring not only is a company that is making money, it is in fact the fastest growing company in our portfolio, and I think it is actually the fastest growing IoT company out there in the consumer IoT space. I don't want to talk exactly about what the numbers are, but I think the company has a scale that is so far is unparalleled compared to other products like Nest and things like that. Not only is this company growing very fast on its hardware product, a simple doorbell, but what they also offer is a service on a monthly basis where people are able to go back to watch videos that's taken by the Ring camera, and people are willing to pay for it. It's up to 90% of the folks who buy the device pay a monthly fee to stay on this. So it's a really interesting. They've cracked this model of going beyond hardware, and you know they sell a service as well. Now, you asked the question, what's the big deal with a doorbell, right? It goes back to the premise that Pam talked about. They actually built something that is useful and relevant. Now, why is that, right? They really stumbled upon this problem in a smart home that whenever there's a burglary that happens, turns out that most of the cases, you're talking 90+% of the cases, burglaries happen after the burglars ring the doorbell. Now, why is that? It turns out that burglars, who happen to be pretty smart, know that when there's somebody at home and they're trying to burgle it, they're going to get nailed for home invasion. But if there's nobody at home and they are able to get in and steal whatever they can steal, it's pretty likely that they may never be caught. Right? So they always ring the doorbell. And it didn't matter if you had cameras in your backyard or if you had sensors on your windows. If you didn't have something at your doorbell, you were not preventing crime. Whereas if you actually had a camera on your doorbell, you were actually preventing crime. Whenever they ring the doorbell and then they see that there's someone answering back, they just turn around and leave. And the company has so many testimonials of people saying that, hey, that actually works. Right? And that is powerful. Now, what is interesting is not only did this company in an IoT way enable that capability, but they ringed up the entire neighborhood. So there are neighborhoods in Los Angeles that are very high crime, where the crime has plummeted 90% plus, because the entire neighborhood has Ring devices, and whenever one person gets to know that there is a crime happening, the entire neighborhood gets to know as well. Now, it comes back to what does it actually take to make a successful IoT company, right? It comes down to the data. How could you harness the data that's coming out of your device? How do you provide a service, not just technology? How do you provide a service that is very unique and it actually adds real value, right? And how does it then translate into someone actually living a better life, right? Whether in this case, these are consumers having a smartphone, right? And they're dropping crime. They have the comfort that irrespective of where they are, they know who's at their door, right? If a package gets delivered, they know it's just the UPS man. If somebody, is doing something else, then they know what is going on, right? So it's real value that wasn't there before. And on top of that, they've done a really nice job integrating with folks like Arctic. For example, what you could do is, through Arctic Cloud, connect up your smart door lock, right? And you can tell, and by the way, this is just so easy to do. Luke's team enabled this to happen within a couple of weeks. So now, if you buy, say, a smart door lock made by August or somebody else, all you have to do is connect up to the Arctic Cloud, and if a UPS man is delivering a package, you can unlock your door so he leaves it inside your door, not outside. Right? So ideas like that had to be hardwired before, but the Arctic Cloud enables that. So that is really the most powerful thing, which is not only is the company delivering a value out to consumers, and the consumers are then willing to pay money for it, and it's based on data created by IoT, but beyond that, they're partnering with folks like us, not only taking our investment, but working with us to make it into a much larger connected home, where it's not just about the doorbell, but it's about all my connected things at home, and they all talk to each other, and it adds value to me as a homeowner.
Yeah, and it ties back to Young's slide where whether you're in the home, in the car, on the go, that connected experience is really important as we go forward. Let's kind of wrap this up. I want you to leave us with 3 key things that you want us to know about Samsung Catalyst Fund. And then I have one bonus question I want to ask you.
Sounds good. So, if there's a few things I'd like for you to take away from here, think of Samsung as, as among the 3 or 4 largest corporate venture capital investors. Last year, we invested up to $200 million in total among all the investment teams, and up to 50 to 60 new companies. The Catalyst team did about 15 to 20 of those companies, and these were early stage disruptive ideas. So if you have a great disruptive idea, and you think is defensible, and you think you can partner with Samsung, please give us a chance. The important thing to think about is, how could you work with us? Is it the Arctic platform? Is it our digital health platform? Is it our data infrastructure team? Or is it any other smart machines platform that we are working on? If it is one of these ideas and platforms that you can work with us on, and you think it's a mutually beneficial idea, I would strongly urge you to think about Samsung as a potential investor and as a potential cheerleader for you.
Good. And then the last question is this. What advice, for any of the entrepreneurs out there or startups that might be in the room, what advice would you give, or a major lesson that you have learned that you think will be valuable for us to know as we go forward?
So as a little startup trying to build a business, it is a bit of a David versus Goliath story, right? A lot of things that could go wrong, from being a little 2-person in a garage to a very successful multi-$100 million a year company that has the possibility to either get bought by a larger company for a lot of money, or perhaps perhaps as an IPO, right? So I guess we're all in the same business. We're in the business of making money, right? So the idea is a startup needs to scale up and become quite successful, and it really can't do this alone by themselves. They need to have the right weapons, right? They need to have the right sling. They need to have the right stones in order to really compete against the big Goliaths out there. So how do you go do that? I think the only way a startup does it is if they actually have something that is core and defensible, either as a business model or as a technology or as an approach to market, right? And they really need to think hard about what is that. And if they can focus on that and they can be the world's best at it, and then partner with companies like Samsung that can really help you get scale. It's the example of Princeton Identity. They had a great technology, but by themselves, they could not have really gotten inside a Samsung phone, right? We really needed someone like us to work very closely with them and enable it ahead of any of our competitors. Ours is the only phone that has it today in such large volume, right? So I think if you can think about how you can surround yourself with the right partners who can scale, and also the right investors. The right investor not only gives the company great advice, but they bring value. They bring connections. They bring the right opportunities at the right time. And they really think about the company being successful. The way we think about investments is, unless the company themselves win in the market out there, we don't quite win. So it's really about how does the company in a very independent way become successful. And Samsung is one of the partners that goes along, and we not only celebrate the success of the startup, but we celebrate our success as well when they work with us. So I would say think about all these things, which is think about what is it that you have that is unique, think about how do you work with the right partners, and think about how do you take in investors who can really add value beyond just the money.
That's good. Okay, so thank you, Shankar.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.